We are now listening in to a press conference by Nashville's Metropolitan Police Department. Take a listen.
From the second level, they immediately went to the gunfire. When the officers got to the second level, they saw a shooter, a female, who was firing. The officers engaged her. She was fatally shot by responding police officers. There was a 5-member team who was on the second floor at that time. 2 individuals from that 5-member team opened fire on the shooter. We know at this point that this shooter is a female. She appears to be in her teens, although her identification has not been confirmed at this juncture. We know that she was armed with at least 2 assault-type rifles and a handgun. We are efforting now to identify her. She entered the school through a side entrance and traversed her way from the first floor to the second floor, firing multiple shots. We now know that there are 3 students who were fatally wounded, as well as 3 adults inside the school. We are working to identify those victims, including the shooter. A total of 7 persons were killed as a result of this morning's incident at the school. By 10:27, the shooter was deceased. The officers had engaged the shooter by 10:27, and she was deceased. Again, I said the first call came in at 10:13 this morning. I'll take just a couple of questions before we go back.
Clear. So the 7 dead, and then the nature of injuries, how many injured do you know? That maybe are being treated still, or injuries? I know first responders weren't. But...
An officer had a wound from cut glass. That is the only other injury that I'm aware of.
Do we know if the injuries of the students, are they critical, or do we know the condition?
The 3 students are deceased. The 3 students who were shot are deceased. 3 staff members who were shot are deceased. That's a total of 6 victims, and then you have the shooter who was engaged by 2 of our police officers, part of a 5-member team, and she is deceased, for a total of 7 individuals. There are no other gunshot victims, non-lethal, that I'm aware of at present.
Do you know how many people were shot? Do you know how many people were shot before the police engaged the shooter?
No.
Do you know if they shot anyone after they engaged the shooter? Do you know if the shooter was able to shoot anyone else?
We do not know who she is at this juncture. We're trying to identify her. She does appear to be in her teens. Again, with 2 assault-type rifles and at least 1 pistol. No, I'm not.
Is there an SRO or an SSO at the school?
No, this is a church that operates a private school. There's no Metro Police personnel assigned to that building. You said 2?
Yeah, the adults.
No, a total of 3 adults. 3 adults who have been fatally wounded. No. So let me go over this again. You have a total of 6 victims. 3 students who are deceased, and 3 adult staff members from the school who are deceased. The shooter herself makes 7. I do not. There is video from the school that we are viewing now to try to learn exactly how all of this happened.
Can you say where the victims were located? Were they in a hallway, in a classroom?
I cannot at this juncture. As you know, 5 of the 6 were transported. So we will get that information later in the day.
Did police engage with the shooter inside a classroom or in the hallway? Do we know the location?
It is an upper level part of the school. It's kind of a lobby type area. It was not in a classroom per se. All right, we'll be back shortly with more detail. We'll tweet out, give you a 15-minute or so notice before the next one, okay? Thanks.
All right, that press conference in Nashville wrapping up. We are learning more details. Many details.
Let us turn to the left's repulsive response to Monday's shooting at the Covenant School in Nashville, Tennessee. because this was a Christian school targeted by a transgender killer. Thoughtful, heartfelt remarks from Democrats and the media mob, they have been few and they have been far between. Some are actually mocking the victims. Take a look at your screen. Now, the now former press secretary for Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs posted that tweet after the shooting with the caption, quote, "Us when we see transphobes." Okay? She has now since resigned in disgrace, but has offered no apology. Now, sadly, the vitriol didn't stop there. One awful progressive talk show host, quote, joking about the victims not praying enough. That's supposed to be funny? I thought attacking one's personal religious beliefs was not allowed in the leftist woke world we live in. Now, meanwhile, a trans activist from Harvard, a law implying that the victims got what was coming to them because of Tennessee's laws against so-called gender-affirming care and drag shows. NBC News, they touted the true victims from Monday night's shooting, quote, Tennessee's trans community, who are now fearing for their lives amid a focus on the Nashville shooter's gender identity. Now, predictably, other Democrats, they're using this as a political opportunity to ban guns, blame Republicans, very predictable. Far-left teachers union president Randi Weingarten calling on the federal government to confiscate guns like Australia, New Zealand. Maybe, Randy, if you're watching, maybe why don't you focus on the disaster that you helped create, that is our educational system. In large part, it is failing because of the unholy political alliance that you have with the teachers' unions and the Democratic Party. And meanwhile, Joe Biden, he doesn't seem to care about the shooting at all. Now watch this. This should anger every single American, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, doesn't matter. He's beginning his speech Monday. He's coming out to talk about the shooting. We have 6 dead people. 3 of them are 9 years old. Here's your president.
My name is Joe Biden. I'm Dr. Joe Biden's husband. And I ate Jenny's ice cream, chocolate chip. I came down because I heard there was chocolate chip ice cream. By the way, I have a whole refrigerator full upstairs. You think I'm kidding? I'm not.
I came down for the ice cream, telling jokes. Now, following the remarks, Biden continued to joke and laugh when asked about the shooting. Take a look.
Do you believe that Christians were targeted in the Nashville school shooting? Do you believe that Christians were targeted?
I have no idea.
Josh Hawley believes they were. What do you say to that?
Well, I probably don't then.
Probably don't.
No, I have no idea.
I'm joking, for real, I'm joking. Come on, man. Anyway, 6 people, innocent people, including 3 9-year-old kids murdered at this Christian school, targeted by a transgender killer. And that is what? That's his response? Joke time? Ice cream time? Seriously? Look, if Democrats can't use a shooting for political gain, they don't really seem to care about shootings. Let me give you an example. You know, Exhibit A is their deafening silence on the daily violence in Chicago and other big cities all across the country. Our friend Gianno Caldwell, my colleague, he lost his little brother in Chicago that was innocently, you know, in the street, murdered, gunned down. That shouldn't be happening, but we don't hear about the names of people killed in Chicago or other big cities or other small towns, in large part caused by, let's see, defund, dismantle, no bail laws. And by the way, compassion seems to disappear and their behavior becomes appalling. In fact, a so-called Trans Day of Vengeance will continue as planned on Friday in our nation's capital. This is hosted by the Trans Radical Activist Network, whatever that is. The demonstration will continue for 3 days. Now, just imagine if this was a MAGA-related group planning a MAGA Day of Vengeance after a hypothetical MAGA-related shooting. How do you think Democrats, how do you think the media mob, how do you think the FBI, politicized, would treat that event? And what do you think of Joe Biden? What do you think he'd have to say to that? Do you think any of these politicians that are constantly attacking conservatives, Republicans, you think any of them are going to say anything about this day that's going to take place, what, on Friday? I doubt it. Anyway, Kamala Harris may want to tweet out a link to raise money for the group. And right now, by the way, amid all the political posturing, Democrats, they are not even able to work on real solutions to school shootings, there are solutions. Think about this. Liberal lawmakers, they just authorized funding, for 87,000 new IRS agents? But for just a little bit more money, Democrats could have hired enough armed professionals to guard every single public school in the country. That amounts to 98,000 schools. I think our kids deserve the same security as those elected politicians. We pay for their security, and those arrogant, hypocritical Hollywood liberals that are rich and can hire their own armed guards. Now think about that. Democrats they're now so deep into their far left-wing ideology that they're unable to deliver any real solutions to real problems. And by the way, both parties could get behind that. Take a look at the crisis at our border. Record numbers of illegal immigrants are now coming across, children's being trafficked and raped in large numbers. Our own Sarah Carter's been down there time after time after time reporting on this. Fentanyl, heroin, meth, cocaine, lethal drugs pouring across that border, killing more Americans than ever before. But because border security is now considered racist in the Democratic Party, and they aid and abet the law breaking, the Biden is now doing nothing to stop what is going on down there. It is being run by cartels. They're not stopping the death, the sexual assaults, the suffering, the drug trafficking, the human trafficking. Well, yesterday, Senator Ted Cruz, he confronted Biden's Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas on this very issue. Let's take a look.
Has the crisis at our southern border made Americans less safe? Yes or no?
Senator, we are dedicated to the safety.
Has the crisis made Americans less safe? I don't want a discourse. It's a yes or no question.
Senator, we have a challenge.
You refuse to answer the question. How many children have been sexually assaulted by human traffickers under the Biden administration?
Senator, this is precisely why we instituted.
I don't want a lecture. It's a question. How many children have been sexually assaulted by human traffickers under your administration?
Senator, this is exactly why on January 5th we announced the parole
Do you know how many? Do you know how many children have been sexually assaulted?
This is why we.
Okay, you're going to refuse to answer that question as well. Mr. Secretary, I want to say to you right now, your behavior is disgraceful, and the deaths, the children assaulted, the children raped, they are at your feet, and if you had integrity, you would resign. And I will tell you, the men and women of the Border Patrol, they've never had a political leader undermine them. They despise you, Mr. Secretary, because you're willing to let children be raped to follow political orders.
Wow. Powerful. We have new details from Alvin Bragg's repulsive political witch hunt. According to sources that we have, Bragg demanded that Donald Trump turn himself in today, less than 24 hours after the grand jury voted unfairly to indict him. But because of security concerns, the arraignment won't take place until next week, probably on Tuesday afternoon. Donald Trump will be booked. He will be fingerprinted. There'll be a mugshot. The media mob, they will get their so desired mugshot. Now, my gut instinct tells me that my friend, my colleague, Pete Hegseth, who was on last night, he's going to be proven correct. That photograph will end up on more T-shirts and more hats that say MAGA and Trump 2024. It will also appear before Judge Juan Merchan, who, by the way, the very same judge who was accused of railroading the former CFO of the Trump Organization. Now, according to Trump, quote, the judge assigned to my witch hunt case hates me. Now, at this point, would you expect anything less? This is not a criminal case. This is a political hatchet job. And by the way, there will be no settlement, according to a source close to President Trump. He plans to fight this to the very end. The first step will most certainly be a motion to immediately dismiss all of the charges on 3 separate grounds. We'll go over this with our attorneys tonight in the course of the program. One, the faulty legal theory. We don't know the exact charges, but allegedly what Bragg is doing is attempting to bootstrap a misdemeanor documents crime to an FEC charge that has never been done before and might not even be legal in and of itself. The second thing, Trump's lawyers will likely argue that the case is beyond the statute of limitations, which they are. After all, there is a 2-year limit on charges related to mislabeling documents. Now, the third reason for a dismissal involves prosecutorial misconduct. Here you have a DA responsible for the charges. His name is Alvin Bragg. He ran on a campaign promise to go after one man, Donald Trump, one family, the Trump family, one organization, the Trump organization. Now, I think all of that clearly reeks of political bias, don't you? Maybe the end result should be that he gets disbarred. As the New York Post points out, quote, surely the judge will be asked to consider this question. Would this case have been brought against any other person? Now, of course, the answer is no. In fact, the DOJ, the FEC, the Mueller investigation, Bragg's predecessor, and even Bragg himself declined to bring these charges until now. Now, meanwhile, Alvin Bragg rarely brings felony charges against anybody in New York, even violent offenders. According to an op-ed from Jonathan Turley, he said, quote, Donald Trump would have been better off robbing Stormy Daniels with a gun. Bragg would have thrown that case right out. Now, Turley is correct. In fact, under Bragg, 52% of every felony case gets reduced to misdemeanors. And of all the felony cases that Bragg actually brings to trial, he loses 49% of the time. In other words, he has one of the worst conviction rates in the entire country. In September, a man named Justin Washington, he received a sweetheart deal from Bragg after allegedly raping a teenage relative. Washington was set to serve 30 days in jail, but before that, he was terrorizing 5 more victims. Now take a look at your screen. Here's another sweetheart deal handed out by Bragg to the perpetrator of a vicious anti-Semitic beating, this in Midtown Manhattan in New York City. Bragg also reduced the charges for a man who attempted to rob the same pharmacy twice in one day at night point. This guy had a lengthy rap sheet, more than 20 arrests for rape, robbery, assault, other crimes. Alvin Bragg didn't care at all. In another case, the perpetrator had 46 prior arrests, out on parole, but Bragg once again reduced the charges. And then there's the, New York resident known as Hillary Rodham Clinton. She has never been charged with a crime, not in New York, not anywhere, despite what is a mountain of evidence related to a variety of misdeeds. For example, the Clinton campaign and the DNC, they committed the exact same crime that Donald Trump is now accused of. They mislabeled a campaign expense. Steele's dirty dossier, the Russian bought and paid for dossier. Well, they said that was a legal expense, but there were no felony charges, no criminal investigations into Clinton. Instead, last year, her campaign merely agreed to pay a $113,000 fine. Never mind the 33,000 deleted subpoenaed emails. Those were destroyed, of course, with something we had never heard of before, BleachBit. And then, of course, we had devices. They were destroyed with hammers. We had SIM cards removed as well. Doesn't that sound a little bit like obstruction of justice, to you? She was never charged, and her home was never raided. And keep in mind the dossier case that we mentioned stems from the very same Steele dossier that the Clinton campaign delivered to James Comey's FBI in the lead up to the 2016 election. But remember this, in early October 2016, Jim Comey's FBI actually flew across the pond. They went to Great Britain. They met with Christopher Steele, and they offered him $1 million if he could corroborate that salacious dossier. Well, even though the Steele dossier couldn't be corroborated, he didn't collect his $1 million because his allegations, we now know, were completely BS. Comey in late October used that very dossier, contrary to the law, and unlawfully obtained a FISA warrant to spy on the Trump campaign, the Trump transition team, and even the Trump White House, a president of the United States. Now, at the top of the FISA warrant, the words true and verified are there. The dossier was neither, but the FBI used it anyway to get Donald Trump. But Comey got a free pass, so did Hillary Clinton with her classified document scandal. Comey said no reasonable prosecutor would ever prosecute. But now he's cheering for Alvin Bragg, tweeting out, quote, "It's been a good day yesterday." Jim Comey is corrupt, he's petty, he's a bureaucrat who longs for political vengeance and cares little about what is called the rule of law or equal justice under the law or equal application of our laws. Now, sadly, the current leader of the FBI doesn't seem to be much better. Christopher Wray's FBI was in possession of Hunter Biden's laptop from hell since December of 2019. Instead of authenticating the laptop and investigating the litany of potential crimes recorded on the laptop, well, the FBI, they told big tech in the lead up to the 2020 presidential race to be on the lookout for Russian disinformation related to people like Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. They knew they had the laptop. And big tech, by the way, was more than happy to oblige, and they even got money from the FBI, $3.5 million in the case of Twitter. Censoring the Hunter Biden laptop story only weeks before the election. Well, you can count me in the column as somebody that believes the FBI knew the laptop was real. They knew it. They knew Rudy Giuliani had a copy. They knew he would likely release it before the election. And my guess, that is the real reason that the FBI was warning big tech companies to be on the lookout for misinformation on people like Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. Now, to date, Hunter is yet to be charged with any crimes, even though there is video evidence of, let's see, Hunter Biden smoking crack cocaine, hiring prostitutes, lying on gun applications, selling access to the federal government. Yet, where's that case? There's also extensive evidence from the laptop and a separate Senate and House investigation showing that the big guy and other members of the Biden family might have benefited from Hunter's alleged access peddling, tax evasion charges, money laundering charges, and now we know there was a real quid pro quo, remember? Donald Trump, Ukraine, quid pro quo. Oh, Joe Biden's on tape bragging that Ukraine won't get $1 billion taxpayer dollars unless they fire a prosecutor in 6 hours. That prosecutor, well, ended up getting fired within 6 hours. Ukraine got your $1 billion, meaning taxpayer $1 billion. And guess what? Son of a B, when he was fired, the investigation that prosecutor was going into with Hunter Biden ended right there and then. And Hunter kept getting checks from Burisma Holdings. So let's get this straight. There is video and digital evidence that Hunter Biden committed multiple felonies, but has never been charged with a crime. His father used your taxpayer money to protect the family syndicate. No indictments. And on the other hand, Donald Trump is getting hit with over 30 charges because of a mislabeled non-disclosure agreement over an alleged affair from 2007 that both parties denied, based on testimony from a convicted felon, admitted liar by the name of Michael Cohen, who we all know is hell-bent on getting revenge against his former boss. Does that seem like equal justice under the law? Equal application of our laws to you? Well, of course it doesn't to me, but Democrats, they don't seem to care about justice. They seem to only care about winning elections and destroying any and all political opponents. Now, this far-fetched case against Trump is not about keeping New York safe or New Yorkers safe. It's about interfering in the 2024 election, just like the FBI did in 2020, when, of course, the Hunter laptop from hell that they had since December of 2019, just like they did in 2016 with Hillary's dirty dossier. We are now entering a very, very dangerous new era in this country, where justice is no longer blind, where judges, juries, DAs have become political weapons, where we have a dual justice.
Leftovers. It's Leftovers, where I read the jokes we didn't use this week. And as always, it's my first time reading these, so if they suck, I don't care. Here we go. In an interview this week, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie said he's considering running in 2024. The bad news, he means for president. Wow, you can see that one coming. Much like him. Because he's big. The nice way of saying fat. Plus size. A study from the American Society for Microbiology finds that New York City rats can carry the COVID-19 virus, which is in addition to rabies, herpes, and switchblade knives. An avid marathon runner admitted to pooping her pants because she didn't want to stop while running a personal best time. It's the most inspirational case of someone pooping their pants on the job since the inauguration. We have no proof of that. You guys love a good Joke. In a tense meeting, 2 female Florida school board members clashed over the definition of the word woman. And after hours of arguing over who said what, they realized it's probably us. I can see that one coming. A new study predicts that the world population could peak at 8.5 billion people by the year 2050. Said one man, "Hey, if you need help with overpopulation, let me know." Intel Corp co-founder Gordon Moore passed away last Friday at the age of 94. Doctors pulled the plug and then waited 5 minutes before plugging him back in again. Yeah, I think he invented Moore's Law. I don't know. A new virtual reality death simulator lets users experience what it's like to feel their lives slipping away. Users report this image as the last thing they see. The View co-host Anna Navarro says she's upset 24 hours a day for having to live in Florida. Not because of the policies of Governor Ron DeSantis, but because Chick-fil-A is only open till 10. Doctors in Nepal say they had to perform surgery on a man who got a water glass stuck in his rectum after a drunken night out. The good news is he made it back to Nepal just fine. That was unfair. Yes.
Keeping it on me a little too long, Director.
And finally, President Biden's approval rating has tumbled to just 40%. So to give his numbers a boost, he asked Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg to indict him. All right. Now, the news. Obviously, the bombshell case that could have unprecedented ramifications for decades to come. The legal victory for Gwyneth Paltrow in her Utah ski collision lawsuit. We go live to constitutional scholar and Fox News contributor Jonathan Turley in outer space. Jonathan, what's your take on Paltrow winning? Jonathan, can you hear me? Seems to be in there. I guess our deep space technology isn't ready yet. Guess we'll do a different story. Poor Jonathan. But he played along, so who cares? All right, the indictment. Trump's attorney says he'll face 34 counts of business fraud. Sources tell Fox Digital he'll surrender next week. Alvin Bragg was so elated he released a few extra convicted killers to celebrate. But Trump is ready to fight.
He's ready to fight. You know, he's the toughest guy I know. I've never been more angry about a charge because today, the rule of law in the United States of America died.
It's dead.
It's dead.
It's dead. While former human being Nancy Pelosi tweeted this nonsense, no doubt from an old BlackBerry in her skeletal hands, quote, "No one is above the law and everyone has the right to a trial to prove innocence. Hopefully the former president will peacefully respect the system which grants him that right." Well, actually, you corrupt old bat, it's not on Trump to prove his innocence in our legal system. It's on prosecutors to prove guilt. But that may not apply to show trials like this or to comments from a woman who was born before the Magna Carta. I wonder what old Joe thinks about this.
Oh, no, look. I'm gonna keep saying it. I believe in the rule of thumb, right? The rule of thumb. I mean, the thumb of law, the rule of law. Come on. And it's like Nancy Pelosi said, you're guilty until proven innocent, all right? That's the way our country works. And so this guy's got plenty of time to prove he's innocent before he's president again. No, he's not president again. I'm president again. I'm president now, right? Yeah, I'm president now. So what are we talking about here?
Meantime, Trump put out a very Trumpy statement. Quote, "The Democrats have lied, cheated, stolen in their obsession with trying to get Trump. We're going to throw every last one of these crooked Democrats out of office so we can make America great again." Now, As for Stormy Daniels, which is not her real name, by the way, since the news broke, she's making a killing selling Team Stormy merch, calendars, t-shirts, and lingerie. And as a bonus, each item comes in a free bag you can put over her head. I mean, let's be honest. So what's this all mean? Well, Bragg vowed he would do this if elected, so it's pure politics. But he has no idea, really, what he just did. He's like a suicide bomber who just blew up his own party. And that party is the poor Democrats. Of course, the media is giddy, and why wouldn't they be? They're dumb. Who always miss the big picture? They've been hunting the same people for years. From parents and school boards to Trump supporters to anyone with a traditional pronoun. Hell, Karine Jean-Pierre declared that transgender people are under attack just days after a transgender shooter massacred kids at a Christian school. What's that tell you? That they really, really don't like you. And it's no longer a left versus right thing anymore. It's inside versus out. The elites versus the outsiders. They look down on people like you, people like Trump. But don't get mad. It's not worth it. Just get your angry butterflies into formation. After all, we can't run around with our hair on fire. You'll end up looking like this. Well, glad to see that we're all dressed the same, like vacationing real estate agents. Very strange. Anyway, do you agree that this is a political persecution? Do you have any new thoughts on this matter?
Wow, that's a challenge. Any new thoughts? Because everyone said everything to almost say about this. I think that maybe the most useful thing to do is step outside of ourselves here and hear it from the other side. And what they're saying is, quote unquote, no one is above the law.
Right.
What they fail to recognize is that Alvin Bragg is the one beyond the law. This is a misdemeanor charge. Its statute of limitations expired 2 years ago, so therefore it has other motivations. But I think the most important new thing to your challenge, Greg, is that by Nancy Pelosi. I think it's easy to laugh it away as the statement of an old lady. But it's not. I think it's the philosophical underpinning of not just the last 5 to 6 years, which is get Trump, he's guilty, find the evidence later, but it is how they view the justice system, guilty until proven innocent.
Todd, you were actually a lawyer.
So was Will.
Oh, that's right.
Not real estate agent.
Now the outfits make sense.
Yes! We've got a bar meeting after.
Yeah, you look like two lawyers at a bar at the Ritz-Carlton after a convention, and your wedding rings are missing. Right? I nailed it, Kat. Anyway, they pile on these 34 counts. We don't know what's in the indictment. That's Tuesday, so it's hard to make conjecture on this stuff. Is it possible they just charge him for like every ledger entry? Like everything that's it, like, oh, that's one, that's two, like, and it's all just one thing, or
that's
what?
what's being reported. That is all these different repayments. But you touched upon the law part, and I think that's what's so upsetting. To me, this isn't about Trump. This is about the rule of law. And when Will and I went to law school, it wasn't that long ago, but it was probably around 20 years ago. We were in there with liberal, conservative, all matter of individuals. And there was one common unifying theme. We all believed in the law and what it could do. We knew the law wasn't perfect, but we all believed that this was the American system and it was better than any other. I'd like to go to bed tonight and say that that is the case, but if we're in a world where political prosecutions are allowed and allowed to go forward and potentially lead to a victory for Alvin Bragg, that is extremely concerning. And I know Trump wants to throw that line out there, if they can come for me, they can come for you. That's real. We have to remember, he was a president, and look what they're doing.
That's true. I'd like to go to bed with Halle Berry. Cyrus, the last time we had a political witch hunt, it was the impeachment, and COVID just kind of had a 2 or 3 month head start. And I'm thinking about this week, and we have all of these like techno nerds telling us to worry about AI. Right. And instead, our entire media has to focus on this thing, and I have a feeling that our robot overlords are smiling.
I mean, dying. They got me. I mean, the one good thing is, I guess we're not seeing the face of the shooter.
Yeah.
So I guess that's nice.
Yeah, that's true.
We stopped that little party. But, you know, for me, this just reaffirms my vote. Like, I'm for certain now that President Trump was the third black president.
Yeah.
Very excited about that. And here's my case. He's got baby mamas.
Yeah.
Check. The DA's always with him. And they're arresting him for that happened 2 years ago, past the statute of limitations. So take the orange hair, get some cornrows.
That's why. Do you think it will add to his street cred if he demands?
Oh, his street cred is beautiful. Like he's gonna have to be giving out. I'm gonna free chains like this at Trump Tower. His street game is strong.
Should he do a presser on so it's Tuesday? They're gonna walk him in. Should he actually do the whole? Just stop and do a presser?
He should do a presser. The man ain't got nothing on me. Fight the power.
Do the fist in the air?
Yeah, I mean, he should do the whole thing.
Yeah, amazing. So, Kat, we talked about this last night. It's been 24 hours. Any new thoughts, insights? Do you think people are going crazy over this, or not crazy enough?
Well, I think that obviously on this channel, there's a lot of people saying this is political, but I think the best arguments proving that it's political is all the other channels and everybody else. Because anybody who's saying they're so glad to see this happen, they're not focused on this exact indictment or this exact issue. They always say, oh, because Trump is, January 6th, or Trump is a liar, or Trump is this, and Trump is that, which none of that really has anything to do in the eyes of the law with this specific issue. None of them are focusing on this specific issue, except for maybe Stormy, which is personal for her, and I can understand that. But I just think to deny that it's political is political. Because this is an untested legal theory. It's a coincidence they're trying it on this guy.
Yeah.
You're admitting that there's all these things you hate about him, and that's why they're trying it on this guy. So, I just think that's just a fact.
Yeah. I think what we're seeing is a consistent pattern in targeting people. It's so funny, too, I know we got to go, but to see that this week you saw Matt Taibbi, who's on the left, and Trump, who's on the right, being targeted by the same engine. Yes. And it just shows you it is not left versus right necessarily. It is inside versus outside. The establishment versus the renegade. And I know my renegades.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
And Essie, you're here in New York with me, and it's interesting because David mentioned the fellow 2024 candidates, or some that maybe candidates that haven't announced yet. I think we have a graphic that shows some of their reactions. We know that former Vice President Pence was on our air. He said that no one should be above the law, but he criticized this case. DeSantis called it a, quote, weaponization of the legal system. Nikki Haley saying this is more about revenge than justice, and so on and so forth. Yeah. How do they thread the needle here? and what do you do if you're a potential rival? Because you need the base support, but at the same time, this is a chance to kind of needle at Donald Trump with all the baggage that he brings, right?
I think you let the court of public opinion do that for you. I think if you're running against Donald Trump, David Chalian's right. The field's frozen. There's really nowhere for them to go. You're not going to win any voters on the right, and we're still in a primary, by applauding this decision or, dunking on Donald Trump right now. So I think they're doing the right thing. But I think when it comes to the politics of this, it's really important to remember, I think that this indictment is coming in spite of politics, because if you were trying to orchestrate a political takedown of Donald Trump, you wouldn't start with this charge. But also, it's important to look at the people who are outraged, right? The folks running against Donald Trump, the Tucker Carlsons, the Fox Newses, the Republican Trump surrogates. These are people who are outraged by this indictment. They were not outraged by Trump's attempt to overturn a Democratic election. They were not outraged by the violence on January 6th. They were not outraged by an illegal phone call to the Georgia Secretary of State, an illegal phone call to Volodymyr Zelensky. They are not outraged by multiple credible accusations of sexual harassment, assault, and rape. They're not outraged by Trump's sexist, bigoted, homophobic, xenophobic rhetoric. They're not outraged by his white nationalism. They're not outraged by his defense of anti-Semitism and neo-Nazis. They're not outraged by all that stuff. So with all due respect, no one should get the are outraged by this indictment.
Former Vice President Mike Pence, who could be Trump's opponent in this 2024 race, also speaking out on the criminal charges, calling them targeted and unjustified. Listen.
Well, I think the unprecedented indictment of a former president of the United States on a campaign finance issue is an outrage. And it appears to millions of Americans to be nothing more than a political prosecution that's driven by a prosecutor who literally ran for office on a pledge to indict the former president.
And our guests are back with us, Norm Eisen, David Chalian, S.E. Cupp. S.E., I want to start with you. We'll go back to Marjorie Taylor Greene planning to come to New York City to protest. We've seen House GOP leadership rush to former President Trump's defense. We have not heard anything from Senate leadership, Senate GOP leadership. It really drives home this wedge and this divide between Kevin McCarthy, Mitch McConnell, two types of Republicans that are left. And yet, we were talking during the break, when these Senate Republicans had the opportunity, and they're the only ones, mind you, that can bar him from running again by convicting him during that impeachment, they didn't take it. What does this tell you about where the Republican Party is right now?
Well, I think on the Senate side, there are a number of Republicans who are ready to move on from Donald Trump. On the House side, I think they still very much want to be where Donald Trump and that energy is. But I don't see anyone really willing to move on from Donald Trump's voters. And that's what you'd have to do. It's one thing to just say, Donald Trump was bad for us and bad for our party. That's obvious. The math is there. It's another to say, and we're willing to say no to the kinds of voters that he courted so that he could win. The white nationalists, the Oath Keepers, the QAnon, the conspiracy theorists, the bigots, this wing of the Republican Party that Donald Trump said, come one, come all. Previous Republican parties would say, you're not welcome here. I'm not going to court you. I'm not going to pretend I don't know who you are. Until this Republican Party is ready to do that, they're really just allowing Trump to loom large and keep all of those kinds of voters inside the tent at the expense of good conservatives like Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, who they've kicked out.
David Chalian, we were speaking earlier in the break about what followed the FBI search of the Trump home a number of weeks ago, and that was a shooter attacked an FBI office in Cincinnati. This is something that is of great concern to security officials here. Now we will have a president indicted. He's already indicted and have to surrender next week. What should folks watching here, what level of concern should they have about a violent reaction to this?
Well, we know the reporting is that you noted law enforcement officials, security officials have been engaged in conversations for a couple of weeks now about trying to quell any such violence and being prepared for it. Obviously, we saw the former president call for protest of his anticipated indictment. He even suggested that there would be death and destruction if indeed he is indicted. Now, Mike Pence, just to note, in that interview last night with Wolf Blitzer, while he called this indictment outrageous, he did say that rhetoric of Donald Trump's is out of bounds and that is totally unacceptable rhetoric. And so we will watch as New York prepares for this moment on Tuesday. Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeting that she's going to go there and join in a protest, to me would be an immediate level of concern of a high-profile member with a following. How large does a potential protest come? This is something for security officials to watch, but you're right to note what happened over the summer in the aftermath of that. And obviously, this is not something that anybody would hope would happen, but it seems that the security officials are engaged in very real conversations about dealing with it if it does.
Right, it is. It's very, very serious. Norm, I want to go back to you for 1 second because I think it's worth reminding people Donald Trump can still run for president and be president if he is indicted, which he has been, and even if he's been convicted, right?
That's absolutely correct. We have parallels in American history. Eugene Debs, the socialist candidate, is one. And the reality is that ultimately the criminal case will be decided by a jury in New York. The political case will be decided by the jury of the American people. They have spoken in 2020 and in 2022, rejecting some of the extreme ideologies, the election denial, and some of the other extreme ideologies associated with Donald Trump. But they're going to have to take into account not just this criminal case, but we're very likely to see additional ones coming down the pike. I think Georgia may very well be next. And of course, we saw the Mike Pence clip. The special counsel in DOJ's investigation is trying to get Pence's testimony. Other individuals are being pursued. That's on the January 6th case. And then you have the Mar-a-Lago documents case. So 4 major criminal cases potentially will overhang this political season, providing judicial challenges, but also asking every American voter to sit in judgment.
Right, and decide where they come down on this. There's so much more to come legally. All right, Norm Eisen, S.E. Cupp, David Chalian, we appreciate all 3 of you and your analysis here. Thanks so much.